There's a last-minute move on the Senate floor designed to gut the Clarity Act. And the people behind it aren't who you'd think. This is the fight that decides XRP's future this week. Not a price chart, not a tweet, a real, brutal backroom war. And it plays out like a Netflix thriller. A proposal just dropped that would quietly strip out protections this entire bill was built on. Treasury says they never signed off on it. One of the bill's own architects says it wasn't any deal she made. So who's really pushing it? That's the mystery, and it matters more than you think. Because on the other side of that door, a handful of people are fighting like hell to drag this thing across the finish line before the Senate goes home for summer. And here's the twist nobody saw coming. The hero of this story isn't one person. It's a partnership that should never have existed. A Republican from Wyoming and a Democrat from New York, sworn opposites on paper, who spent 11 months and 3 separate bills building this side by side. When one of them stood on that Senate floor this week, she basically dared her colleagues. I've given you everything you asked for. What else do you want? So who's trying to sink it? Who's trying to save it? And what happens to XRP if the clock runs out? Stop scrolling, because by the end of this video, you'll understand the real war behind the headlines, the names, the moves, the deadline, better than 99% of the people refreshing their portfolios right now. Let's go. Real quick, straight from the heart. I'm not a financial advisor, and nothing here is a promise. Anything I say about how a vote might go is an estimate based on public positions, never a guarantee. I make these videos because I believe in this space, and I believe in you. So do your own research, protect your family first, and let's stay patient together. Cool? Let's get into it. Let me set the board before I introduce the players, because you need to feel why this particular fight matters so much. The Clarity Act is the bill that finally ends the fog. For years, nobody in America could say for sure whether a digital asset was a security, a commodity, or something in between. That uncertainty is exactly what kept XRP in limbo, kept builders scared, kept the big money on the sidelines. This bill draws the lines. Who regulates what the rules actually are. It already passed the House. It cleared the Senate Banking Committee on a bipartisan 15-9 vote. And now it sits on the Senate floor. One real vote away from changing everything. But here's the thing about the final stretch of any big law. This is where bills die. Not in the committees, not in the headlines, in the last few days, behind closed doors, when everyone's exhausted and the clock is screaming. That's where we are right now. The finish line is in sight, and that's exactly why the fight has gotten so intense. And I want to frame this the honest way, because that's how we do it here. This isn't really a fight about whether crypto is good or bad anymore. That war is basically over. This is a fight about the fine print, about specific words on specific pages that decide who's protected, who's liable, and who wins. That sounds boring. It is anything but. Because those words decide whether XRP and every serious project gets to operate in America with confidence, or stays stuck in the gray zone for another year or more. So let me take you into the room. First, the move that could quietly sink this whole thing, the one Treasury is already distancing itself from. Then, the people fighting to save it. Stay with me, because this next part is where the thriller really starts. Okay, here's the play that dropped this week, and why it set off alarms. There's a piece of this bill about protecting software developers. Stay with me, because this is more important than it sounds. The idea is simple and fair. If you write open source code, and later some criminal you've never met uses that code to do something illegal, you shouldn't automatically go to prison for it. You only face criminal liability if you actually intended to help with something like money laundering. Intent. That's the key word. It's the protection that lets builders build in America without living in fear. Now here's the move. A new proposal surfaced this week, reported through Politico, that would weaken that exact protection. It would strip out the language shielding developers and, according to people who read it, actually expand their liability. In plain English, it makes it riskier to build crypto technology in the United States. And if you're a founder deciding whether to build here or move offshore, a change like that pushes you straight out the door. So who's behind it? This is where it gets murky, and I'm going to be careful and precise, because precision is everything here. The proposal is associated with Senator Catherine Cortez Masto. But, and this matters, the Treasury Department pushed back on the idea that it reflects their input. A senior crypto policy voice said it was not even close to the administration's position. And one of the bill's own lead architects said flatly that this proposal was not the product of any agreement with her, and that it falls short on protecting developers. So you've got a last-minute change that key players are actively distancing themselves from. That's not consensus. That's a wrench thrown into the gears in the final hour. Let me pause right here because I need to know something. Did you know the real fight right now isn't even about XRP directly? It's about protecting the developers who build crypto. Type yes or no in the comments. I read them personally, and I want to see how many of you knew the battle was happening at this level. Yes or no. Go, then come right back. All right, so if someone's throwing wrenches, who's pulling them back out? Who's actually fighting to save this bill? Because the answer is the most unlikely duo in Washington, and their story is the heart of this whole thing. So let's meet the people fighting to drag this across the line, and forget everything you assume about Washington, because this part is genuinely inspiring. At the center of it is Senator Cynthia Lummis, a Republican from Wyoming. She's been the driving force on digital asset legislation for years. She got elected back in 2020, already knowing this was her mission, because Wyoming was building crypto frameworks before most of Washington even understood what a blockchain was. And this week, she stood up on the Senate floor and made a case so direct, it stuck with me. After 11 months of giving her colleagues nearly everything they asked for, she basically said, "I am genuinely struggling to understand what else you think this bill needs before we act." That's not a talking point. That's someone who has been grinding on this for years, staring down the clock. But here's the part that gives the story its soul. Her closest partner on this isn't a fellow Republican. It's Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, a Democrat from New York. Think about that. A Wyoming Republican and a New York Democrat, about as opposite as American politics gets, working hand in hand. Lummis said people have raised eyebrows for years that the two of them team up like this, and that they've become genuine friends who trust each other. Together, they wrote the first real comprehensive framework back in 2022, then a bigger one in 2023, building in consumer protections, cracking down on bad actors, refining it draft after draft until it became the foundation this entire bill now stands on. And that's the reframe I want you to hold on to. When people tell you crypto is hopelessly partisan, point to this. The bill you're watching fight for its life was built by two people who are supposed to be enemies, who chose the mission over the tribe. There are also others in the trenches right now. Senator Tom Tillis working with Senator Ruben Gallego to hammer out a compromise both sides can send to the White House. Real people doing the unglamorous work, trying to get to yes. So how does this connect to XRP? Directly. Every hour these people spend fighting is an hour spent trying to give XRP and this whole industry a clear, legal home in America. The heroes of this story aren't influencers or traders. They're a handful of senators most people can't name, doing the hard part. But here's what almost nobody's telling you. Even with heroes fighting and a bill this close, there's a clock on the wall that could end the whole thing, regardless of who's right. And it's closer than you think. Let me show you the deadline. Here's the part that turns this from a drama into a countdown. The Senate is heading for its summer recess in early August, and floor time in the Senate is the single most precious resource in Washington. There are other big bills fighting for that same narrow window. So even with momentum, even with heroes pushing, there's a real chance the calendar simply runs out before a vote happens. There's been talk of a possible floor vote as early as Monday, August 3rd. But I want to be straight with you. That's talk, not a guarantee. It could slip. By the time you watch this, it may have already moved one way or the other, so check the latest. And if it does slip past the recess, it's not dead, but it gets much harder. One industry leader put it honestly. It's certainly not impossible if it doesn't happen in August, but it makes September very, very tight. Their advice to holders was simple, and I'll echo it. Folks should not lose hope. Things fall apart many times in this process before they finally come together. That's not spin. That's just how big laws get made. Now, there's outside pressure too, and this is where it gets interesting. The big banks, through the American Bankers Association, aren't fully opposed. Their president actually said on CNBC that there's a lot of good in the bill, that crypto and banking can coexist. Their fight is narrower, a couple of surgical edits around stablecoins and yield. So this isn't banks versus crypto to the death. It's a negotiation over specific language. And meanwhile, the pressure to act is enormous because the rest of the world isn't waiting. Other countries are racing ahead on crypto rules, and every week the US stalls is a week it risks falling behind. So that's the full board. A bill that's closer than ever, heroes pushing, a wrench in the gears, banks negotiating, and a clock that doesn't care about any of it. So here's my challenge before the final section. Everyone's fixated on, does it pass Monday? But whether it passes Monday or slips to fall, there's one thing this whole battle is quietly proving. Something that should make every XRP holder more confident, not less. 60 more seconds. This is the part that's actually about you. Let me bring this whole thing home. Here's where we stand. The Clarity Act is one vote away, sitting on the Senate floor. A last-minute proposal is trying to weaken it, one that Treasury and the bill's own architects are distancing themselves from. An unlikely alliance is fighting to save it. The banks are negotiating, not warring, and a brutal recess deadline hangs over all of it. It's close, it's messy, and it's not done. Now, I know how this feels if you're holding XRP and watching the drama. Exhausting. Like every week this is the moment, and then it slips again. I get it. So let me give you the reframe that actually matters, the honest one. Zoom out from the day-to-day chaos and look at what this fight is really proving. A few years ago, the US government was openly hostile to this entire industry. Now, the debate in that Senate room isn't whether crypto should exist. It's about the fine print of how it's regulated. Senators from opposite parties are risking their political careers to get it done. The biggest banks in the country are at the table saying, there's a lot of good here. That is a staggering shift. That is the ground moving under your feet. Whether the gavel comes down Monday, in September, or later this year, the direction is locked in. This is no longer an if, it's a when. And the people who understand that, the ones who can watch a bill wobble in the final hour without panicking, those are the ones who tend to look back on this messy stretch and smile. We're early, not just on price, early on the entire legal foundation of this industry being poured, in real time, in a Senate hearing room. The drama you're watching isn't the system failing. It's the system finally taking crypto seriously enough to fight over the details. That's what progress actually looks like up close. Messy, tense, and absolutely worth it. The pain doesn't last forever. It never does. And the foundation is being poured right now, whether the vote lands this week or 3 months from now. So here's what I need from you, and it doesn't depend on a single senator. Stay informed. Be the person in your circle who actually understands what's happening instead of just reacting to a scary thumbnail. If this breakdown helped, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because I'm tracking every twist of this fight so you don't have to. Drop your yes or no in the comments if you haven't, and tell me straight, do they get it done before recess, or does this slip to the fall? I read every single comment. Stay early, stay patient, stay unshakable. Protect your family, do your own research, and never let anyone rush your decisions. And that includes me. This has been Crypto with BHW. We're early. The foundation is being poured. And I'll see you in the very next one.